Hello everybody, it is Katie here, and it is of course time to talk about Shadowhunters. Oh my god, episode 3. Wow! I have to say that it's one of my favourite episodes from this whole show so far. Maybe second best to the Alec episode. I absolutely adored it. The pacing was perfect. There was so much emotion packed into this one episode. So much backstory, so much depth to the characters. And of course we got Maya introduced as well. There were so many good things about this episode and I loved it. So I took notes again because I couldn't not take notes. So straight away we start off with a flashback. Little small Alec and Jace. I said last week that I have been eagerly anticipating these flashbacks. Part of me was also a little worried about them as well because I know flashbacks can be quite hit and miss. Sometimes they can be quite cheesy and not flow with the rest of the episode well. I know in season 1 some of the flashbacks were really great and then others weren't as good, so I was really excited for them but nervous as well. I had nothing to be worried about because the flashbacks throughout this episode were perfect. We see Jace and Alec at a couple of different ages, but the start of the episode is then when they are very young. Because of that, you know you're in for an emotional episode just by that very beginning part. Little Alec was so cute, and then little Jace was already cocky and arrogant. Bless them, they were just adorable. So this episode focuses on Alec not waking up. After the events that happened with the tracking stone in the second episode, Alec is unconscious. We find out in this episode that it's because part of his soul is stuck with Jace, basically. He needs Jace to return to him and try and bring this part of Alec's soul back. Magnus's warlock magic is keeping Alec alive for the time being, but that won't last forever. So that aspect of the episode was quite tense because I really felt for Magnus having to use his powers to keep Alec alive. So Jace in this episode washes up on shore after jumping off the boat in the previous episode and he finds Gretel's body. So it turns out Gretel is actually dead, which I'm really sad about because I thought she had a lot of potential. Whilst Jace is checking her body, somebody spots him, automatically thinks that this is his doing and calls the police. So barely a few minutes into this episode, Jace is already a wanted fugitive. Good times. Good times. As if he hasn't got enough on his plate at the moment. Now he's wanted by the police for a murder investigation. So back at the Institute, Clary walks in, drenched from the water, doesn't have a clue what's been going on. Jocelyn is there to tell her what's been happening at the Institute. We can see that the relationship between Clary and Jocelyn at the moment is quite tense. So I am interested to see how long this is going to go on for, because I feel like Clary has every right to not be too favourable towards Jocelyn right now. So outside of the Institute, Luke and Alaric find out about Gretel and they get shown a sketch of the person who was found with her body, and of course it's Jace. But Luke in this situation can't really defend Jace because he doesn't know exactly what's happened, and also he's just found out about the experiments. So part of Luke is probably wondering if Jace is capable of doing this to Gretel. Back at the Institute we get this scene between Magnus and Jocelyn. I know this scene was released last week so I'd already seen it, but I love this scene because once again you have another person telling Jocelyn what she's done wrong. Because she really has made a lot of unwise decisions. Even though she was doing what she thought was best, it's not gone down well. She goes to tell Magnus that Clary is safe, and Magnus has to basically remind her that the whole world doesn't revolve around Jocelyn and Clary. I really loved that he brought up what he'd said to her in the past. He'd advised against wiping Clary's memories all these years, but he'd still done it anyway because it was what Jocelyn wanted. And he basically reminds her that that was kind of a selfish decision because Clary wasn't old enough to make her own decisions at that moment. So I really enjoyed that scene between them and I thought the dialogue was perfect. And so now we have Clary and Victor. Now that Clary is back in the Institute after being on the ship with Valentine, Victor wants to question her. He seems like he's acting quite nice in that scene, giving Clary tea, assuring her that he can protect Jace. I just don't know how I feel about him, because obviously he's not being nice. Most of the characters do not trust him. But is he really such a bad guy, or is he just doing his job? Is he just doing what he thinks is right? I don't know. He really confuses me. At the moment, I don't like him because I don't like the way he's treating the characters that I love. but I can't figure out whether he's necessarily a bad guy or whether it's just the situation that he's been put in. But Clary doesn't trust him and lies to him about Jace, says that she's had him memories wiped. She tells Izzy that she didn't tell Victor the truth and that they're gonna find Jace together. And I can't say that I blame Clary for doing that because I wouldn't trust Victor either. So then we have the scene where Jace goes to Hunter's Moon and we finally get to meet Maya. Jace goes into Hunter's Moon, he's not having a great day. He needs the telephone and he meets Maya, who's working there. He knows that she's a werewolf, she knows that he's a Shadowhunter, but she comes off as quite friendly to him, so he has no reason to be suspicious of her. When he calls Izzy, he finds out about Alec. So obviously his main priority after that is to get to Magnus's apartment and save his brother. But then after the phone call, it becomes clear that the wolves are not going to let him just stroll out of there. They think that he's killed Gretel because he was the one seen taking her. And so then we have this fight in Hunter's Moon between Jace and a few of the wolves. I loved this scene a lot because the fighting was great and Maya was great, and also Jace. You could see the desperation in him. He didn't want to have to do this right now, he just wants to go and help Alec. Meanwhile, Raphael is stalking Simon again. Simon throughout this episode has been ignoring calls from his mum, so he finally decides to call her. Raphael gets salty that Simon's focusing on that instead of Camille. So Simon goes back to his family home and sees vodka in the house. We find out that his mum has obviously had a drinking problem in the past after his dad died, and so seeing that really gets him concerned. I'm loving that the show is focusing on Simon's relationship with his mum because it was something that we didn't touch on that much in the books. Even though it was a big part of Simon's personal story, we didn't get too many scenes between them, and I always wish that we'd gotten more of that. So the fact that they're dealing with this in the show makes me so happy. Simon ends up calling Clary to tell her, and then we have one of my favourite scenes in the episode where Izzy, without hesitation, tells Clary to go and help Simon, even though Alec's life is in danger, and they're planning to try and portal him to Magnus's apartment. There's a lot of risk involved. When Simon calls, Izzy just tells Clary to go. And I loved that there was no drama around that scene. Izzy didn't make Clary feel guilty for leaving them to go help Simon. It just shows that Izzy understands the friendship that is between Clary and Simon. Obviously, Izzy would drop anything to help either Alec or Jace, so she understands that Clary isn't going to want to leave Simon to deal with this on his own. So that was one of my favourite scenes in the episode, just because there's so much support. No drama, just support, and that is what I like. So Victor finds out that they're planning to portal Alec, and immediately puts his foot down and says no. He claims that it's because Alec's too weak to leave, but really he just wants to use him as bait to get Jace to the Institute. I liked seeing Magnus and Izzy's reaction in this scene. I hated the way that Victor said that Magnus was only there because he was letting him, as though it was some sort of privilege for Magnus to be in the Institute. Because boy, that warlock has done so much for Shadowhunters, and yet Victor still treats him like shit because he's a warlock. So I hated the way that he was talking to Magnus. Also in this scene we have Raj. Yeah, Raj is back. He's one of those characters that fandoms tend to adopt because they're in the background. I think he actually spoke a line in the Alternative Universe episode in season 1, and the fandom just seemed to adopt him. So Raj is there to make sure they don't leave. Shut up, Raj! Literally every time he speaks now, I hope somebody tells him to shut up. That needs to be a recurring theme throughout the show. And you see once again Magnus trying to use his magic on Alec. That broke my heart a little bit every time, because even though he's this all-powerful warlock, there was nothing he could do to help Alec. But whilst he's trying to keep him alive, we get more flashbacks. This time it's teen Alec and Jace. They're training together and it was so perfect. It summed up their relationship really well. It also showed us how vulnerable Alec was back then and how Jace was always the confident one of the two of them. Also, I need to point out that the training demon that they were killing looked great. Obviously, one of the complaints that I had about season 1 was that the effects were really hit and miss. Sometimes the demons looked especially bad. Whereas the training one in this episode, I was relieved to see that it looked genuinely like a demon. We cut to this scene where Maya is chasing Jace down an alleyway. He's badly injured and ends up getting spotted by random passers-by who are concerned for him and end up calling an ambulance. So whilst Jace is on his way to hospital, Clary is helping Simon track his mum. We get this really lovely scene where she's encouraging him to tell his mum about him being a vampire. I thought that was a really sweet scene between the two of them. I keep saying all the time that I love their friendship, and I think Kat and Alberto are great on screen together. This episode just reiterated that for me. So back at the Institute, Raj is trying to sass the actual Queen of Sass, Magnus Bane. Raj, get wrecked, son. What are you playing at? Of course, Magnus isn't going to stand for that, so he ends up magicking Raj against the wall. Bye, Raj. Elsewhere, Jace is in hospital. So yeah, basically Jace needs to get out of there ASAP. But Luke and Maya show up. We get to see Maya in wolf form in this scene, and she ends up chasing Jace around the hospital. I love the wolves in this show. I think they look gorgeous. And I loved how it didn't show the whole transformation, but it showed like little bits of it. Also, every scene that Maya had, she's very badass and very intimidating. So I loved her scenes throughout this episode. Jace manages to escape because Jocelyn finds him and steps in. I found this scene really interesting because you have Jocelyn trying to be nice towards Jace. So far, it doesn't look like she suspects anything about Jace. Does she not suspect that he isn't actually Jonathan? Because so far it seems like she genuinely believes that he is her son. So I'm very interested to see how this relationship is going to play out over the course of the season, because in the books, we don't get that much time. Jocelyn doesn't even wake up until the 3rd book. So we don't ever get to see anything like this. I'm looking forward to seeing how the show builds that. Will they get some sort of mother and son bond before they actually find out the truth? Will he come round to the idea that she might be his mother? There's so many possibilities around this plot, and I don't really know which route I prefer them to take. Back at the Institute, Victor figures out that Alec has been portaled away. Poor Raj, lying there in the bed disguised as Alec. Victor tells Izzy that the wolves are after Jace and that he would have been able to keep him safe in the Institute, but of course he's on his way to Magnus's apartment, and Izzy fears that the wolves are going to get to him first, so she ends up promising Victor that she will bring Jace back to the Institute. Wasn't a great decision, but it was the only thing that she could do. Victor puts her in this impossible situation really, so she had to say that she'd bring Jace back. So we cut to Magnus's loft and we get that Malik scene. Magnus is pleading with an unconscious Alec to wake up. My heart, guys, my heart. Earlier on in the episode, Magnus had made a comment about how Alec wasn't Sleeping Beauty, you can't just wake him up with a kiss. And then Magnus, all out of ideas, actually tries to wake him up with a kiss. I'm fine. I'm fine. Well, that was heartbreaking. Poor Magnus. Unfortunately, life isn't a Disney movie, so Alec doesn't wake up. We do get another flashback though. Small Izzy this time. Can we just talk about the young actors in these flashbacks? How well they portrayed the characters? Because the one that played young Izzy actually spoke like Izzy. They were so convincing. Alec and Izzy are talking about the Paravatai ceremony, and Alec ends up saying that he doesn't want to go through with it, and this is where Izzy figures out that Alec is in love with Jace, and I'm so glad that we got to see this in the flashback. That was just such a good moment between the two of them, and I loved how Izzy didn't make a big deal of it. She just went on to assure her brother that he was great and that he'd make an amazing Paravatai. And it was just so sweet. And yeah, these flashbacks killed me throughout this episode. They genuinely did. Then we have one of my other favourite scenes from this episode. Simon going to meet his mum. Raphael pretended to be Simon's band manager. Of course, Simon's mum thinks that he's lovely and charming and invites him to dinner. I am telling you now, we better get that dinner scene. Could you imagine Raphael sitting down for dinner with Simon and his mum? Maybe Simon's sister as well? Please, give us that scene. So obviously this is Raphael's way of blackmailing Simon now. Simon doesn't want to put his mum in danger, so he's going to do whatever Raphael asks. And the scene where Simon said to his mum that he wanted to come back home, that just broke my heart. Because that's all Simon wants. He didn't ask for any of this. He just wants to be back at home with his family. So leading up to the end of the episode, we have this showdown between Jace and Maya. She finally catches up with him and there are more wolves here now, trapping him in. But thankfully Thankfully, Luke turns up, and even though Maya is part of his pack, you can tell that she doesn't want to follow Luke's rules right now because she thinks that Jace has killed her friend. It made me really sad that we never got to see an actual scene between Gretel and Maya because I would have liked to have seen that. But she's very angry at Jace and is not happy that Luke is telling her to stand down. But then Izzy shows up with that whip. I have so much love for Izzy and that whip, honestly. So eventually Maya listens to Luke and lets Jace go off with them. Jace gets to the loft and takes the stone from Magnus. That scene between the two of them, it was very brief, but it was so lovely. Jace looked utterly vulnerable in that moment when he took the stone. Especially because throughout this episode we've been seeing these flashbacks where he is confident, he's arrogant. So to see him in the present day with all of that stripped away, and to see his vulnerability when all he wants to do is save his brother. I'm just really happy with the way they showed that in this episode. Props to Dominic Sherwood for the way that he played this, because I think Jace was perfect throughout this entire episode. So yeah, this scene where Jace is reunited with Alec, he uses the stone to try and bring Alec back. And this scene was so emotional, because whilst you have Jace trying to help Alec, we have flashbacks to the Paravatai ceremony. So whilst we're showing them saying their vows back in their teens, you have Jace saying his vows to Alec in present day as well. And it was just such a beautifully worked scene. So many emotions. Honestly, when they thought that he was dead and you had Jace hugging him, Magnus, Izzy and Clary are all upset. Oh my god. Like, I mean, I knew he wasn't going to die, obviously, because he's Alec Lightwood, but still, the emotion that they managed to bring through in that one scene. I didn't expect so many tears in episode 3. 3 episodes in, and this is what we're getting. Where are we going to be towards the end of the season? How much pain are we going to feel? But of course, Alec does wake up. He's reunited with his brother. But of course it doesn't last long, because Victor arrives, and he's arresting Jace. Jace is being taken away to the City of Bones, and that's how the episode ends. I can't describe how much I loved this episode. As I was saying just before, I think Dominic was playing Jace perfectly in this episode, because even though him and Clary are more main characters than the rest of them, well, that's how it's supposed to be anyway, I feel like we all pay more attention to the other characters. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because Clary and Jace haven't been as convincing as the others. But that's the way I always feel when I'm watching the show. But the 3 episodes that we've been given this season have been great for their characters. It's not that I didn't like them in the first season, because I did, but I just love them so much more in the second season. I don't know whether it's because they're being written better or just because the acting has changed. I don't know, but I'm just loving their characters so far this season. So I'm keen to see what's going to happen after this episode. Obviously we're going to get more of Maya, and I'm really excited for that because she is a character with so much potential in this show. So she's definitely something to look forward to. Also, I'm excited to see what's going to happen with regards to Jace being in the City of Bones. So I'm anxious and excited to see that next week. So that's about it that I can think of to talk about right now. I feel like if I keep going then I'll just gush some more because I really did love this episode. It ticked a lot of boxes, let's just say that. Please do let me know your thoughts on this episode down in the comments. What did you think? Were you emotional? Or was there anything that disappointed you? Discuss all the things. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye!